All right. Good evening, colleagues, or good afternoon, and welcome to this Astor B.Watts Memorial Lecture. I think that's what we refer. Before we get into the substance of this evening's proceedings, I want to ask our good friend, Brother Shepherd, to lead us in a word of prayer, if able.
God and Father, thank you so much for bringing us together to the lecture of this organization, BLP. Thank you, Lord, for things that these persons become enlighten us about things they know. We believe, God, that this is going to happen again. Thank you, Lord, for showing us this through the lecture. For God, give them all the wisdom that we started before and what is part of us today. We take away from here, learn more about system. Bless us all together and help us all to sit and rose and we travel out.
Amen. Thank you very much, Jay. Colleagues, yes, and welcome to this, the second in our most recent series. Of course, this lecture series has been going on for a long time now in the Democratic Labour Party, and our aim during these presentations is to share with our members and indeed with the larger public ideas which emanate from these corridors, and of course to give you, the audience, an opportunity to participate in any discussion that may evolve. My personal view is that I would like to see a lot more, especially aspiring candidates at these meetings, and it is amazing that it seems almost impossible to get them to come and join these groupings. Good to see you, Mr. Ben. Victor, how are you keeping? Good to see you. Old neighbor. Yes. As I would say, it is a pity we don't get some of these persons aspiring to be candidates to come to these sessions. And I want to join in condemning them and asking that, they make every effort to attend these kind of sessions, not only to probably hear something different or hear some of the facts of the history of the Democratic Labour Party, but also to help them to build on their ideas and their activities. As time goes on, I'm going to be forced to make more and more comments about it, so I may also get as unpopular as all the others who may have made comments about it before, but I certainly do not see how candidates can aspire to be effective in their constituencies if they're just not there. And I don't know how they're going to organize their campaign from here at George Street alone. But that will evolve, and I guess the directorate of the party will speak to those candidates at the appropriate time and have them have another thought. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the distinct pleasure of having Mr. Ronald Jones, who I don't like to use the term needs no introduction. Ronald became a good colleague of mine between the years 2008 and 2018 in the House of Assembly, when as Minister of Education, he would have led the Democratic Labour Party's management of the entire education system in Barbados. There are some who say, and I tend to come down on that side, that he probably introduced one of the more calming periods of education in Barbados, at the same time expanding in many, many areas. Certainly in crossing the portfolio of the Ministry of Health, which I held for 5 years between 2013 and 2018, he would have assisted in establishing a number of medical schools in Barbados, which to this day still operate and effectively and bring revenue to the country because of their activities. Of course, the highlight among them is Ross University, but there are many others, George Washington, etc. Today we are in the middle of robust discussion about education reform, and I think it is only appropriate that we should have Ronald come today and speak to us about this. He has set the topic for his lecture, however, and he asked me to put it this way: meeting the needs of the Barbadian students in the 21st century world, how can this be achieved? So I leave it entirely up to Ronald to deal with the topic in the way that he has put it. And of course, for you to listen attentively and share afterwards with any discussion we may have. Brother Jones.
Thank you, Comrade John Boyce, leaders of the Democratic Labour Party, all those who are assembled here this evening. The topic, John, is not at all far from what you suggested that I deal with and what the General Secretary sent out. But, you know, it is not easy to be an educator, especially in these times. So I tweaked it a little to give it the kind of bent without talking about educational transformation. That is becoming a sort of beaten up term. But it is really about educational change, educational transformation or reform or whatever you want to talk about, call it. In reality, meeting the needs of the Barbadian student in the 21st century world, how can this be achieved, is about seeking to satisfy the many demands that students will place on the education system. But I want to start off, and don't be too concerned about the size of this document. This particular document, I believe, is it's done in 14-point font because of my eyes. So you know how 12-point, 14-point, how that would look. So there's 215 pages done back in front, but I don't intend to deal with all of this today. You will be here till tomorrow morning, and those men who sometimes might not go home early would have to give an even longer explanation as to why they're going home tomorrow this time. I also have next to me one which says, reforming education in Barbados, what questions must be answered before we start the process? And I said those questions must address various aspects of the education system. This was done a little while ago, and in the chair is another one. This is 94 pages long, and the other one in the chair is 112 pages long. But you will find that they're cross-cut. Not all will be original in relation to when I worked on the paper. To do any change, I'm not going to be caught up with almost sloganeering, or I'm not going to be criticizing, I'm going to critique rather than criticize. Slightly different focus, because there's going to come a time, and I hope sooner than later, that the Democratic Labour Party has to manage again the affairs of Barbados. And education is one of those critical pillars of national development, of social enhancement, social change, part of the social agenda. So when we merely criticize without providing solutions, either now or in the future, it seems to me essentially a waste of time. So the way I'm going to deal with this, why do we educate a nation? Why do we educate children? Why do we educate people? And I'm going to just give you a few points. The purpose of education is multifaceted and can vary across cultures, societies, and individuals. However, there's some common objectives and perspectives on the purpose of education, which would include the acquisition of knowledge and skills, knowledge, cognition, the mind, cognitive structures, skills which don't come from the hand but come from the mind as well. There's this strange divide as someone who uses manual dexterity, manual labor, as though they don't have any cognition. And therefore we sort of shunt them or put them aside. It's really a crazy notion because, in fact, I have always argued that the individual who develops skills is a stronger being than one who just stays within the academic cognitive mode. I've always argued that. You have to employ all kinds of facets of knowledge and skills and competencies to reach the kind of level that we've had before and we still can have in Barbados, but we're looking towards the future. Personal development. Education is also for personal development. It sort of gives you that self-actualization, which makes you comfortable not only with yourself, but with others. And that's what you want within a society. So any reimagining slogan or reforming or transformation must also look at the personal development of the individual. Preparation for employment. At the end of the day, you're going to be able to feed yourself. So education is also tied up with preparation for employment, part of the workforce, commitment to ensuring that you're able to feed yourself, feed your family, be part of your community and your country. Socialization. A lot of people put a lot of strong emphasis on socialization. And socialization, education is a key component of the socialization purpose. If you go back into history, where there was most Barbadians were devoid of education, but they were still socialized through forms of brutality as a result of the enslavement process of this country. That is socialization. But education within the modern context creates a liberalization or freeing concept, which makes it easier for schools and educational institutions to educate its people. Citizenship and civic engagement. I'm a citizen of Barbados, and there are things that I must do to remain a citizen of Barbados and to enhance the country in which I find myself at this current time. The country of my navel string, the country that produced me to be, I would consider to be a reasonably citizen, just like Mr. Ben and Mr. Boyce, and our president and our secretary, all of us in this country. It promotes an understanding of civic duties, rights, and responsibilities. Sometimes we make more noise about our rights than our responsibilities. And maybe you can argue that might be as a result of slight twists in an understanding of the true nature of education. It will also have to make us problem solvers. If we're not able to solve problems at our level, at our domestic level, how can we then solve problems at party level or national level? We've got to be able to resolve those problems, and education makes it possible for us to do that. Preservation of culture and cultural transmission. These are the purposes. So when we're looking at reform or transformation or reimagining, at the bedrock, at the foundation of all of this, you got to understand what's the purpose you want to achieve. So cultural preservation and transmission, and how is that culture preserved? Cultural heritage, traditions, values, from one generation to the next. Now, bear in mind that not all cultural traditions should be carried right through to an extreme, because some of those cultural traditions might be work against the best interests of the people. And I'm not talking about the landship. I see someone writing about that some time ago when I was reading something somewhere. Or walking up at Bashment, Calypso. I'm not really talking about those because you can accept or reject. Even though sometimes I am surprised at what we take as the strength of our culture. I'm surprised sometimes. So someone can easily say, I want 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old boys and girls to perform bashment calypso at national events, when that is not for them. Education is also about grading at the different levels and what you accept as the norm among our people, among our children, among our youth, among our adults, among our more mature citizens. Promotion of innovation and creativity. There was a time when one can argue that a lot of our people were innovative, and again still is. It is just that we don't see it visibly before our eyes and therefore can comment on it. Our real rights, and I go back into history, when they created that wheel with the spokes and covered it with the metal from the furnace, the blacksmith pounded them to move tons and tons of sugarcane from small landowners to the many factories that, was part and parcel of Barbados. They were innovative. And education is also a species that's about health and well-being. So establish the purpose. Now, in moving forward to reform and meeting the needs of our students in the 21st century, this is 2023, so we're into this is almost the third decade, some say the second decade, but we're into 2023. And we're barreling down the road very, very rapidly. So in essence, the purpose of education is complex and multifaceted, and encompassing intellectual, social, cultural, and practical dimensions. Is often seen as a means of personal and societal advancement. Those things I'm talking about. How do we meet the needs of the Barbadian student in that kind of milieu? It involves integrating technology and education, so there cannot be any wasteful discussion about integrating technologies. How? Not the need to integrate, it is how to integrate and what it is to be used for and how it is to be used. Still critical thinking skills, because there seem to be a paucity not only in Barbados of critical thinking skills, but in the world over. When you can listen to news media or social media and see how people argue out their position and what they accept, including the mass amount of disinformation that is obvious to the naked eye of the educated. It is mind-boggling. So Donald Trump can have 70,000 people voting for him. Is there something million now? 174 million, well, that's a lot. But let me tell you, that frightens me. But it's a lot. Because people are not critically analyzing. They almost have reached a point where they are desensitized to the reality of the world, to the reality of what is happening in Palestine and Israel, the Gaza Strip. What is happening there now is abhorrent. It's abhorrent. I don't care who or what you support. I support one thing, and one thing only. That's humanity. Humanity, I don't support left, right, middle, in between, murder, kidnapping. I support nothing so. I understand the history, I understand the issues, I understand the problems. But unless humanity is taken first, and then everything else revolves around that, we're going to have what's happening in Ukraine. We're going to have what is happening down this part of the world, where everybody trying to make their country zero, heading across to Mexico and Guatemala, down Texas and California and Florida, trying to get over into the United States. We're going to have all of that. So we have not, in fact, in this world, as far as I'm concerned, been critical thinkers. In Barbados, too, we have that issue, where you hear all kinds of comments. It means we're not thinking critically. So we have to do that. There must be collaboration between educators. I'm not talking about teachers. Educators, because a teacher must move from being a teacher to being an educator. Because an educator takes not different perspective, but is a more rounded and involved being. He's a researcher. He's a professional individual who develops his craft, his skills, his techniques. He or she is an individual who understands the dynamics of the world in which we live, and able to make choices at the appropriate time to have a meaningful impact in that society. So technology integration, a lot of what I'm saying is tied up in a lot of these pages, so I'm not going to go through all of that. Just to understand, I'm going to give you just a blush of them, or as I said, we won't leave it in here. Technology integration is a crucial aspect of achieving the needs of the Barbadian student. What do we have to do to make sure that that happens? First thing, those who deliver must be competent and sometimes beyond competence in managing the technology. And by technology, I don't only mean the hardware, I mean the software, I mean the curriculum that can arise as a result of using the technology. We are behind the eight ball. I think we call it the 8-ball. When you're playing that game that uses sticks, what do you call it? Pools? Pools. Different to billiards? Are they same? They're similar. I've never been able to hold the stick well, so I leave that alone. The way that technology can be used can really transform education. And in 1979, under the current Prime Minister, no, Cyril is before. Cyril was the progenitor, the messenger coming out of the environment of the United States with his knowledge of the use of technology in schools. But in 1979, with the change of the government, not 79, 97, it's 97, where we had again phrasing, again we are caught up with phrasing, edu-tech, educational technology to be used in schools, integration of technology in the system. There were some benefits, but a lot of failures. But I have avoided arguing and talking about that. I was under pressure in the cabinet of the Democratic Labour Party to spend more time arguing in relation to the failures of that. I cannot live in that world. Honestly, everybody knows that it collapsed and that we spent over $350 million on that, as well, repairing schools, bringing the technology in and stuff, but not following through with the training that is, because the training got to be constant and revolving all the time. You can't train some people in 1997, 98, 99, but then you don't train them in 2000, 2001, 2000. They got to be constant because new things are coming in the arena, new platforms for learning, and there's so much out there that it is mind-boggling. Technology augmentation. Today, you can teach a person who loves biology, anatomy, who are be a doctor of humans or doctor of animals, through that. Simulation exercises and techniques utilizing technology. What I saw in the paper, 24-page or 36-page paper presented by the government, is a strong emphasis on technology. I support it. The Democratic Party has to support it. But let me warn you, it is extremely costly. It is costly, even though the prices have dropped substantially over the years, and the power and the capacity now of a little smartphone is beyond the big, massive things that used to exist. But it is costly still. Digital literacy education, we got to provide comprehensive digital literacy education to ensure that students have the necessary skills to navigate and critically evaluate information online. When you look at the data of the penetration of technology in Barbados, there's a substantial penetration of technology in Barbados, particularly with the cell phones, smartphones. Most people have 2 or 3. We are like 140% penetration because of the amount of people got a cell phone from this company and a cell phone from that company and 2 from all of that. They do have. But what are they using it for? What are they using the technology for? Games, nothing wrong with that. We can use games as a means of teaching. It's called gamification of education. We can do that. But everything has to be structured to achieve a given objective. A lot of, during the, COVID-19 environment, we were caught with our pants literally down. because it was then realized that still a lot of our people didn't have, one, access to the internet, and two, the state itself could not rise to meet the needs, particularly of disadvantaged families, disadvantaged children. But even sometimes with those who had, they tricked or they pulled fast ones on their teachers. They turned on the systems, came up with their names, and they went and did other things. That was the experience in many instances. And therefore, there would have been a significant, I was going to say decline, but a gap opened in the school system for those 2 or 3 years, and it reflected generally in the quality of the exams we pass, not necessarily the rate, because you can still have a 65% pass rate of those who did the exam, but you're moving from grade 1 to 3, where the cluster would not be at grade 1 or grade 2, but more at grade 3, because there's a gap, a significant gap in knowledge. And that can be the case. When I look at what government is saying with persons who took exams 20, 13, 18, 19, whatever in there, it's from 5 or more, it's around, for those who took, 65, 60%. I have other statistics that go back earlier that is broken down to its lowest common denominator, which will show you how schools perform, the overall school performance, how schools shift, if you're using that as a gauge or as a guide to tell you something about schools and schooling in Barbados. And let me say to you that there's a fallacy in this country, because a lot of us are not aware of the statistics that are produced and interrogate those statistics. That some schools in Barbados, based on value added, we developed during my tenure, and thanks to officers in the ministry, an instrument which tested value added based upon the entry level of a student moving from primary school to secondary school and then progressing 4 or 5 years into the system. Instrument is there. Teachers and principals can use that instrument to test the value added. When a child enters a school with 30 or 40 marks, that's one child. Another child enters a school with 80, 90, or 95 marks. And the child with 30 or 40 in 2, 3, 4, or 5 years moves his grades and his marks from that 30 to 40 to 60 or 70. The value added based on the instrument design would have been more substantial from a fellow who remained constant at 90. Yes, the fellow at 90 might end up doing 8 or 9 CXCs at one time, but the other fellow might be able to do 4 or 5 at one time, or might be able to do 3 now and 4 a year later because of maturity, intellectual maturity, cognitive development, and exposure. So I want to dispense the notion that schools, and I identify any, but those who, for some reason, end up with children whose scores at age 11 is not the best score that you would want. I don't care if anybody telling me I don't want my daughter, so that's why I work so hard with her, with a score of 30 and whatever assessment, even if it's in class assessment or national assessment, to get 30. I would tear every hair out of my, see Verla laughing, every hair out of my head. Because we all want the best. If it is expressed in a score or in running 1, 2, 3 in a track event, or if you're doing basketball, we want the best and we try to do the best. So the Barbadian child, and I'm saying in this document, I've said to the government, and I've passed these on to the government, I want to add that. And to you, and to Pedro, whoever want them, I pass them on. I have put into this document positions and postures. And I'm saying to that, the government and the private sector of Barbados can't renege on creating hot spots in disadvantaged locations in this country. When it does make more money, and I talk about government, I say government. When I get sometimes animated, I tend to go into the vernacular. To create hot spots that those who can afford to pay can still benefit from internet connectivity. It must be done. Otherwise, we are going to have what some people call the desert, where technology exists. You can't get on your smartphone, on your tablet, or your laptop, or computer, whatever else you have. So that is there. That's necessary. Because virtual labs and simulations, stuff a virtual lab, the things you can do with a virtual lab. You can go in and touch the heart in a virtual environment, in a simulated space, and feel how it beats. You can see the flow of blood. All of that is possible. So that the 21st century Barbadian child needs that. By embracing technology integration into education, Barbadian students can gain skills and competencies needed to thrive in the 21st century. I'm not talking about plagiarizing work, because the critical thinking skills will kick in. But I've always argued that once you know the basic concepts, if you know that Astor was the product of 15 and 10, that by simply asking you about product, it means I have to multiply. And I've covered that early childhood education. I've covered that in primary schools. So why do I have now to sit down with a pen and paper and a pencil and write out 10 and 15 is 10 multiplied by 15, the product is 150. Especially if you go higher up. I mean, technology has taken all of these almost drudgery tasks away. I know the traditional hardcore teacher would say, no, Ronald, you got to go in, the test, and you got to put it down on paper and multiply. You already covered the concept. You know it. If you don't know it, you can't move on. And technology allows you, especially if you're doing assessment online, people call it tests, but assessment online, that you go in, you do it, you submit, before you blink, the results are back to you. You don't have to wait 3 weeks for you to know how you perform. You don't. We cannot allow that to continue. Children must know in the instant and correct. Correction is a form of learning. I did it wrong, let me do it right. You go to the teacher or go, and I'm saying this in here as well. The teacher can no longer be the seer in the classroom. There must be other seers. That teacher has to have support. Teacher must have support. So I am the only body in there with 30 children, and I'm frazzled. I just can't sit up in here as though I'm a lecturer. I got to be going to those children. So my support and assistant teachers, if you want to call that demarcation that way, it might be something else. The name is important to me. This government put some people in school during COVID. I wouldn't say what I thought they were. I wouldn't say that because, we look down to the future. Some teachers were telling me that they came to spy. And I told them, no, that you have to take a more formative view of those in the classroom. But you have to have that in the classroom to help in any reformation, any change, any reimagining, and all of this. Critical thinking emphasis, and I mentioned that. Problem-based learning, inquiry-based learning. We have to be urging our children to be part of that world. Not only regurgitators of what somebody said, but critically analyzing what they've said and taking a position in relation to that critical thinking. Project-based assessment. We have to do project-based assessment. We just can't put a pen and paper test in front of a child. I want to send them down, spikes down, properly supervised, And they come back with me after discussion among themselves of why down there still keep flooding. What are the geographical issues? Real world learning, we have to go there. There's some of it now. But in order to move away from simple paper and tests, we have to do project-based learning. We got to do cross-disciplinary learning because the time span that we have for learning in schools can't be done just through pure subjects in themselves, but cross-disciplinary learning it has to happen. So you can link some special social studies, geography, history, those things. Today, many people don't do history. I don't know why. I love history. Cognitive skills development, focus on the development of cognitive skills. One of the problems that we've had in education in Barbados is that we've done things in fits and starts. Every single child in Barbados must be analyzed, or emotionally analyzed, psychologically analyzed, every single one before they get into primary school. And this is where I agree with the state. These things have started and they stop. But you know why they stop? Because we don't have the money. And I said this up front, so I get this out of the way. This process is going to cost a barrel of money. We ain't even started to think yet. I read the proposal by the state, and they said that by December of 2023, they will know what's going to be. I'm going to say you're not going to know. You will have a broad perspective, but you're not going to know because you have not yet put into place, or you have not yet even conjured up in your mind what are the things that you really have to put in place to achieve given ends. So it's going to cost a barrel of money. So therefore, we're going to have to look at national wastage. There's a lot of national wastage. If we want to put more money into education, we're going to have to eliminate national wastage. In this country, there's a mountain of wastage, large amount of wastage, large amount of duplication, large amount of hiring people who have no impact at all on Barbados. But we surround ourselves as leaders with them. This body with this name, and this body with that name, and that somebody with no name. Wasting gallons of money that if we want to achieve student liberation in the 21st century, that we have to do that. We have to have global awareness. We're not living here on this space alone. Everything that happens in this world affects us. The merchants in Barbados would argue that because of procurement issues and shipping issues, that the price of everything gone up in the air. I used to grow food one time, now I only grow chives. The land that we used to have the airport take it up. You know, when you take airport people land, you're creating serious generational poverty. Because you can take up 2 acres, 3 acres, an acre and a half acre, that used to grow canes, edibles, potatoes, cassava, pumpkins, squash, whatever else. You rear sheep, in other words, like Comrade Calvin would say, raising stocks. We had an interesting explanation as to the stocks he meant, you know. But when I sat down and analyzed it, it made sense. So we have to have global awareness. Everything impacts on us. So our students got to be globally aware when we talk about, you know, what I found interesting, we have so much land in Barbados still uncultivated and is growing mossy. And yet, somebody who like me, who like pudding with a little sauce, you could decide if I like pudding and sauce, got to buy my sweet potatoes at one time $10 and $12. Now my price has dropped to $5, $7. So what I've done is I've cut back on the potatoes, and when you can get breadfruit, use more breadfruit. Yes, I know we had a drought, but part of the issues is the direction taken in our agricultural arena. So We have to know, we have to incorporate global perspectives in education to foster cultural competence and prepare students for our interconnected world. Personalized learning, the responsibility must not only lie on the school and the teacher. Some of the better students in our country are so self-disciplined that they don't have to wait on anybody to do your homework. When I was going to school back in the day, be careful. I didn't know that I used to suffer from severe motion sickness. You understand? But I used to love history and geography. So as I get into Sam Lord's Castle bus, Sam Lord's Castle bus going all up in St. Philip, where they have this new hotel that they have a party. Engineered. A lot of people think that is something that just drop out of the sky and put down there, but I ain't getting into them things. I used to got my history book reading, so I could still remember the War of American Independence, the War of Jenkins' Ear, and all of those things, because personalizing and self-learning, self-discipline is important. Teachers must teach from the data before them. So you got data-driven instruction. Student goals, second, working with students to set their goals. Involve students in setting academic and personal goals. All of this is part of the student of the 21st century. STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and maths. I am not, let me say that, a person who leans heavily towards, I'm more of a humanist. So I did humanities. But you know something? Nothing wrong with that. There's an argument, and I accept it, that humanities create a more cultured human being who can possibly go on to do other things. So rather than just simply saying STEM, I want to say STEAM. Science, technology, engineering, maths, and the arts. Writing. I want to see some beautiful literature. I've been spending some of my time writing. And next year, I'm going to launch 5 books, one after the other. One after the other. John, I can invite you. Because you got to bring money. Bring money and come. Bring money and come. You would like them. I'm sure you would like them a lot. So STEM is important, and our students got to be able to do that. We don't have enough of it because too many students early turn off from math, from the sciences. Even though most of our scholarships are given in that area for those students who are able to pass through that system. And we have weaknesses in the history, geography, literature. And in my mind, I cannot understand how you can say you're doing English language or grammar and don't understand and appreciate the literature. In truth, and if I use the literature to teach grammar and syntax and all those things, use the literature, use the writings of our people to make sure that there's a difference. A lot of our young people today don't know who is King Dala or Seymour. Let our literature go back to cultural preservation and share it with your people. A book is coming on that, John. I have it finished already. I just need some. I don't know, you can call it what you want. I just do my fingers, so my fingers might be a little stiff. So STEM education is important. It must be put in to anything we do, and I saw it to some extent in the government paper. And the phrase is, by prioritizing STEM education, Barbadian students can develop the skills and knowledge necessary to thrive in a technology-driven and interconnected world. So yes, coding, no quarrel. not how it was forced on the students during COVID, and telling teachers, go and on some website and learn it. Especially if you are not bent in that direction. In many instances, you have to hold hands and guide people. During the tenure of the Democratic Labour Party, we had, I don't remember his name, he come from up that part of Christchurch, John, from MIT, who used to put on workshops at the University of the West Indies. The students, they couldn't get it enough because of small resources. What's his name? No. You know what I mean. His name ain't coming to head now at my age. Nice, sharp, old man from Christchurch, brilliant, comes from NIT, a Barbadian. We have a Combermere, electronics, moving well. They participate in these electronics programs overseas, where, all these bright people come together and put forward their robotics and their electronics. And there's a fellow in here he talks a lot, gets a little hot around his head sometimes, but who is technically gifted. He was teaching these things for almost, if I know him, before Adam was almost Ward. Adam Ward, that's correct. Before Adam was a lad. There was one school that long before EduTech came to put the technology to do registers and curriculum was developed at a school called Ellerslie. And Ellerslie became one of the leading schools in Barbados in that arena. In fact, the program that the government removed before 2010 used was based on the platform that was developed by Ellerslie. A lot of people don't know these things. And Mr. Ben doing so, shh, I am not speaking about you. We gotta go to soft skills development. A lot of our people are too hard and too harsh, too prone to fight and vulgarity. Soft skills development. I hear that. Passive aggression too, that's very much there. You better don't mash a fella for accidentally, because we go in and out of anger and fluster. And that has to do with how we are socialized, how our emotional senses are tended to in the field. And in the paper there I asked, is there a conflict between the school, parents, and community? And in some instances there is. A lot of people who should be going to schools to converse with teachers and school leaders don't go, as though they have an aversion to speak. And they might very well have an aversion to speaking to teachers, educators, leaders of the school system. They might very well. And when you track it, a lot of the children who are achieving, regardless of which grouping and Barbados they come from, is because their parents have shown a significant attachment to the school and the learning of their children and their discussion. So soft skills development is absolutely important in the whole process. Environmental education. We're living in a world where we talk about climate change. We do environmental studies now at the post-14 level and at CAPE and those kinds of things. But we have to have listen, I was going to a funeral, we've been having a good set of rain the last few months. And there was a former magistrate who became an ombudsman. I almost called him a friend of mine. So I wanted to go to his funeral. I saw the rain set up. I dressed as I normally do, lovely, well adorned. And I'm driving, going to St. Philip de Les. I had to turn back. You asked for water? I have never seen so much water pouring, coming down. I got as far as Lancaster, phase 2, not the one on the below side of the road, the ones that we had built. I said, Jonesy, boy, I ain't get up there. I said, Jonesy, you can't go any further. Let the dead pass by the dead. I had to turn around. I had to turn around and get home and offer prayer on his behalf up that there's something there for him to have a little libation. Because there are environmental issues impacting us. Our children have to be made aware of these things. That's all part of our reform. And by integrating environmental education into the curriculum, Barbados students can develop a deeper appreciation for the environment. Not the garbage that we throw all over the place, except somebody will pick it up. That's a callous nation. When you can be taking your cans and bags and bottles and garbage and throwing it in gullies and throwing it beside the streets, environmental education, we got to start now. Part of the transformation process of building. Career guidance programs. I've seen something in the government's proposal. I'm a bit scared of it. I'll put it here now. Most people don't determine what they want to do in life at age 13 or 14 or 15 or 16 or 17. There's some who might well do it that, but the majority don't. So don't tell me that you're going to build or have a school that children are going to be boat builders. If eventually they like fishing and they want to own their boat and there's entrepreneurial education and those kinds of things, then we've got to be able in a post-secondary environment to create those facilities and institutions for that to take place. And 18 is still a very young age. You know, between 0 and 18 is a little flip of the switch. Electricity has not yet started to flow. So I'm saying that is the case. Yes, there's not a problem attaching students to industry, you know, for them to learn some of the facets of industry. In commerce, for them to learn some of the facets of commerce. In government, in finance, in banking, there's nothing wrong in having those attachments. Necessary. And they should be permeated throughout the education system, not only in fits and starts. If you have a program of CVQs at a modern comprehensive school, not only there, but throughout the system, right? So we have to do that. We have to have that comprehensive career guidance in our systems. In most schools, we have one guidance officer. You know what it will cost? You can have a school of 800-900 children, but let's say from for a farm, where you have 5 by 30 is 150, 300 students. I have one career guidance officer. Or one guidance officer also has to do with disciplinary and other troubling issues that students manifest going through the school life. So we have to have that as part of the reform process. As I said, all of these things are broken down, and any person who wants to have it digitally, I will share it with you. But the time doesn't allow for me to really go into the individual components. Each one of these things that mark yellow is an individual component of what I just spoke about, broken right down. I used to be a good teacher. I think I'm an awful teacher now because I don't really teach. Got to break it down. Investing in the continuous professional development of educators. I believe that every single educator in Barbados, every 3 to 5 years, let's say 5 years, should be given their own laptop or their own tablet by the state, by the taxpayers of Barbados. Every 5 years, because that is the tool that you're going to help use for assessment, for pedagogy, for all of those things. Costs. If the person wants to say, well, I have mine, so don't spend the money on me. We know Barbadians. Some people are saying, don't worry, I have mine. I would tell them that. I got my 4, 5, or 6. I like Ben. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Nobody asked me for any. Because if I go from one room, I must be near one to do something. If I feel that I can't sleep at night, I must get up and help write this paper. rather than waste time sleeping. When you're sleeping, nothing happening. So work, do something productive, and then go to sleep. That's when the body calls for it. By investing in the continuous professional development of educators, Barbadian students can benefit from teachers who are well equipped with the skills, knowledge, and strategies needed to navigate the evolving educational landscape of the 21st century. Under the Democratic Labour Party, we took a position which said that no teacher now must enter the classroom without being trained. And we developed at Astor Teachers College, Bachelor of Education in Primary Education. The emphasis means that when you finish up there, you can go into the classroom. But I'm hearing some disturbing noises where people are still taking people because of political expediency and put them to teach children. I am not going to a lawyer unless that lawyer has the LEC or some equivalent thereof. But you would want to keep putting students before teachers who are not adequately trained and prepared to deliver. We said, if you want to be a teacher and you're leaving secondary school with these qualifications, just the same way that we pay for university students, by and large, go to Astor, we pay for you too. You come out after 4 years with a bachelor's of education in primary education, with strong teacher delivery skills. But I'm hearing some noises. I try not to interfere, but people still call me sometimes. So we have to have teacher engagement. Community resources must impact on student learning. So we have community engagement. I'm going to go through this quickly. A lot of this has to happen for education to make sense, for our nation to benefit from these necessary expenditures that we put in. I suspect that somewhere along the line there's inefficient use of the resources, but the resources have never been enough. Even though we've spent, in this country, we have historically spent between 18 and 21% of government's national budget per year on education. A lot of it goes to tertiary education. And downstream, there's some sufferation. In order to build out the reform or the reimagining, you can't build a house from the top. Well, it might be possible. The artificial intelligence now, they might come up with some way of doing that. But you see, early childhood education, which we took on by the horn. It's been going on, but we took it working with the Maria Holder Trust. We said we're going to put in 6 new nursery schools. And we had plotted the numbers that those would satisfy the number of people who wanted early childhood education between 3 and 5. And we did the Maria Holder at Oldbury, the Maria Holder at Church Hill, the Maria Holder at Government Hill. We did a Maria Holder down in St. Thomas. We built out the school there in John, what do you call it? Lord, it used to be part of my constituency. Talmabury, named after the lady who was janitor, but also was parent, who looked after people's children. We named it after her. The Olga Miller, we were rolling out. There were still, you say escort? I said to do the land and down up there. I don't know if they started there. Huh? They just leveled the land, which near to the nursery. I don't think any building has started. Deacons, Halls Village, Endurance. And we were looking at one in the north. All of those to give that foundational learning. And parents who couldn't afford it but benefit from state-sponsored support. Necessary. It continues. But it's not new. So there's no need to reform it. There's need to enhance it, not reform it. So we need to push that along and give children a little touch of understanding the use of the technology, because they do, I'm surprised how these little children when you're complaining about, I'm stuck here, I can't get to my IG or whatever you all want to call it. Mommy, give me the phone. Tick, 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 here. At 4 and 5 years old, mind-boggling, and I've seen it happen. By prioritizing government support in these areas, students can benefit from well-rounded and adaptive education that prepares them for success in the 21st century. All of these things that I've mentioned earlier, including the provision of hotspots, including the provision of the technology in the hands of those students who we were all, even though it is cheaper now. I remember when Mr. Ben and myself were involved in technology, we were selling computers at $5,000, $6,000, $8,000. I ain't have the capacity of his little phone now. But now you can go and get something for $800, $900, but some people can't afford based on their circumstances. And part of the democratization of education means that we had to remove the circumstances that affect them and make it possible for them to prosper and to learn. I made a statement, and one of these documents says you can't learn on a hungry belly, because you spend more time thinking about the hunger than thinking about the learning. And I think it is in this one, I said to the state, look, breakfast, those students who can't get breakfast at home must get it in a place where they can go and feeling comfortable, food in the belly. Secondly, they got school meals. I'm not talking about how it is look now. I remember I didn't get school meals when I went off to school, but I remember my brothers got school meals, and the way they used to talk about school meals when they came home from my school, they were still in primary school then. I used to be jealous because my mother used to give me $5 a week back in the day. You know, it's $5 a week back in the day. And my little daughter, I give she 12. If she doesn't want food from home, I give her $12. For a day, I had $5. John, one of those loaves, look like salt bread, but they weren't salt bread. It was these round loaves they used to bake in a pan, and then the lady used to cut down the middle and put in bologna, and we would get a plus. And you know the plus when they first came out, you understand how they tasted. They taste very good now. Or Coke or something, go back to school and learn. But we can't use those same structures then to impact on a different environment. So somebody has to take care of the needs of those children. Not every child in Barbados is well looked after by family or community. Not every child. The child care board can do a lot more than they are currently doing. But then they might have lost workers. Might have lost. And then I've said, when they have lunch, the children eat regularly. But since we can't feed them 5, 6 times a day, we try to feed them 3 times a day by giving each of them a voucher for evenings where the parent can go and get, it's a food or voucher. It's not a voucher where you can go to Fogarty. It's a food voucher to feed those children. So that underlying hunger dissipates, or that child ain't gonna learn. We must boost their ability to learn. I'm trying to find that. Now, they have a lot of points in here, but I'll come back to that because I know, but it's important. As I said, this will take about five months. I know, John. We got to act quickly in this whole thing. Now, with all of this, one thing that has to change is the Ministry of Education. You don't need to spell out all these things that you don't have a ministry that can handle it. Have to have it. And I've identified about several departments that must be put in place to handle this thing with people that are trained, that are competent. Don't try and bring in a friend and then create bottlenecks within the system. So there are several departments that must be put in place. I've jumped straight off of that because time is of essence. Early childhood education department, primary and secondary department, they're there now. But I'm just going through all of them. Policy and planning. I mentioned policy. One of the things that I've found a bit scary is that the chief education officer and the head of the reform department are now the policy planners, and they're the ones who speak on policy. In our structure, the minister or ministers speak on policy. Those personnel can help you to fashion out and to beat out the policy. But there's a scary thing taking place where we are pushing them to the front line and say, you're the ones who speak. In case there's any criticism, it comes on you and not on me. That's unfair to them. It's grossly unfair to them. And I felt sorry for the chief education officer the other day. That's my part of my nature. I feel sorry for a whole lot of people. After she made a presentation of the middle school or junior college of excellence and the senior college of excellence, she then had to return and say, in other words, this is what I mean. I felt sorry for her because I know her well and I know she's a good, decent human. And then when she explained it, I said to myself, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Because it was for the first time that I realized that a child entering at 11 plus can go right through to 16 or 18 in the junior college of excellence. But that a certain cadre could transition to the senior college of excellence at age 14. With that, it's the same thing. Warm over broth. That's not my broth, John. I cook well. The same thing. Don't try to create sexy notions to end up at the same point. Education should be as simple as possible to get the greatest return and the greatest benefits. Don't insert these convoluted structures. If you said to me the 11 plus is a problematic notion, so be it. I'm not going to argue with anybody about 11 plus, 5 plus, or 10 plus. Because my interest is children's learning. It's about children. It's about students. For the first time, well, not for the first time, everything that goes wrong is blame on 11 plus. But everything that goes right also got to be blame on 11 plus. I want to make that point. We have not been able yet to engineer man to such a point that they all respond, behave, accept learning, schema in the same way, identical. We have not at the same time. At the same time, it's impossible. I was a practitioner in the classroom, so I know students learning. There was a boy, I like to call his name, not his name, I like to remind him. We were using Radiant, where there was a book in the classroom, so we used to do choral reading. You know what's choral reading? But then after you do the choral reading, you will say to John Brown, John, paragraph 1 is yours, read it. Paragraph 2 is yours, read it. Paragraph 3, so you get them involved. And I'm seeing this boy reading. The cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see so much sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. But his eyes ain't moving. He's looking at the wrong page. You see this? Memorization of everything that we read. I'm a young teacher, so this hit me hard. So I tell him, okay, you go on, because I'm doing what is called action research, right there and then. And I said, I know I got to do something with him. He is memorizing, but he can't read. So you have to do something with him to make it better for him to read, because reading is at the foundation of everything else. If you can't read, and I mean reading in its various dimensions, in its comprehension, its inferences, all of those things, we have to spend some time in getting our children to read, because then they can't do math if they can't read, can't do problem solving. You can put down figures, but you gotta read the figures. 114 added to 163. It's figures, but you verbalize it in the language of instruction, English. So we got to spend some time there. So if the child can't read, the child can't do 11 plus, 10 plus, or assessments in any other form. So some time has to be spent there with that child. And I just took a little segue into that because it is important for us as parents and educators to look at this. So we have to have a policy and planning department that is properly set out. We have to have, I think I have, what it is? Yeah. You have to have policy development, strategic planning, stakeholder engagement, research and analysis, data collection and management. All of this has to take place. Curriculum development. All of what we're talking about has to go in now to the curriculum development specialist. You got to develop the curriculum, and we didn't start to do that yet, but we're ready to put all kinds of structures in place. By that time, we are implementing A, B, or C. We have to do it. I'm not saying we don't have to go through reformation, change, reimagine. I would be a hypocrite to myself if I say we don't have to make some changes and adjustments. We have to, but we've already put timelines, so you're going to work to fit into timelines, come what may. And that's where I have some concerns. Curriculum design, subject and topic selection, educational goals, all that is tied up. National standards adherence, establishment of national standards, where we want our children to be at a given time. And if at a given time they're not there, we know we got to step back a bit and take them there. That's what we have to do. The assessment and evaluation department, and I'm talking about assessment. Listen to me carefully. What we do now at the primary level is every school does its own thing. If we are looking to use assessment, either total assessment as a forward movement mechanism, in other words, a transfer mechanism all going on to the next stage of schooling, there must be some standardized instruments or assessment modalities that must be in place. Schools can still do their normal, but children, we're doing multiplication, or we're doing what we call long division and that kind of thing. And you can do those in your school, and children get 10 out of 12, these kinds of things. But when we want to use assessment as a transfer modality, it must be universal across every school. And to make it universal across every school, you have to have a properly planned, structured, and personnel of good quality designing the assessment and evaluation department. In this one, I've spelled out what I would consider to be most appropriate. We've been talking about national assessment. It can be done. The technology is there. Don't move children from their schools and put them into a new environment that is strange to them. What is the purpose of that? So I'm moving you from school X and I carry you down and you're creating a whole new day for those children. And if you go there, some of these children are shaking a little and perspiring. And it's not because of the 11 plus itself, but in now moving these children from the environment for which they are comfortable, because somehow we don't trust each other in this country to do the right thing. We don't trust educators to do the right thing, that somehow they're going to go beside the child and tell them, no, 1 and 1 is really 2, not the 11 you put down, and things like that. It can't work. So we need a proper assessment evaluation department. The teacher training and professional department. Teacher training must be critical to the entire process of reform or reimagining education. Because teachers got to know the needs of every child in front of him or her. So we need a teacher training and professional development department, which will link Earlston Teachers College, Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic, University of the West Indies, Barbadian Community College, and whoever else in the Ministry of Education, to come up with the professional training and professional development. And let me tell you, today the internet, back to technology, you can do so many professional development courses without leaving home. Without leaving home. I have been doing a bit of studying myself online for the credit union purposes. And you know how they've broken it down? You can do it in 2 or 3 hours. 2 or 3 hours. And some days when I ain't got a lot to do, I sit down and do one. And I encourage all the others to, you will do one too. Because the time is coming when the Financial Service Commission will say, if you don't qualify, you're not going to run a credit union. So prepare yourself. That is there. But we have to make sure that people leading the schools are knowledgeable about what to do. One of the things that bothered me greatly was the incident at Springer. Because Springer is dear to my heart, I must confess. Not that I've had anybody that went there or anything, but I've had good teachers and good friends and people that I've loved dearly and all kinds of things. And that incident came down. We got to be careful how we deal with the school leaders and teachers in our system, especially if they don't possess the knowledge to do something. And there must be built into the system where you can go to get the knowledge to do something. Because not everybody possesses the knowledge to do something, but they understand there's a need to have emergency simulations. So this one has opened our eyes completely. Sometimes things happen after the fact. But my position was very simple. Let's give the students and the teachers the counseling necessary because of what happened, but neither do I condemn the go and say no more. That was my posture. But I am putting my principal head on the block. I'm stepping forward as the leader of education in Barbados. That's what I am doing. And said, this has gone wrong. We're going to make a difference by putting these structures, these systems in place. That has to be the case. So leadership training, leadership understanding, understanding the diverse dynamics. You know what caused the massive fear? Not only the presence of whatever they said were present, but you realize what happened in the United States every day. You realize what happens in Barbados, in communities. There is a permeating fear in the country that it could happen in one of our schools. It happened in the hospital. You remember that somebody went to the hospital once or twice, shoot and kill somebody or do whatever they did. I can't be exact, but that happened in the hospital. So why can it happen in the school? So that the fear, we are walking about our country with a lot of fear in our bosoms. And it is expressed in the kind of way that happened at that school. May they continue to push the barriers of learning forward and let that be an experience for learning and to make a difference. So we need that. The secondary school department, I don't support, and I'm speaking about me. I'm speaking for the party, for the fact, for the event, for nothing so. I do not support breaking the schools at 11 plus to 18 into no two-tier system. Bermuda running away from it. In the United States, they're looking to get rid of it. But yet somehow we are the ones who want to take up something as though new. It has been tested and tried over other places without the kind of benefits that they thought it would have. Please don't bring it. We can have holistic movement in our secondary school from age 11 to age 18, and I'm using 18, because I've found that we try to push out our children too fast. I want the concept of readiness. to be inserted. There are some children who will be ready at age 14. I knew a single parent, she was a teacher, teaching at a school out yonder, so in one of our parishes. Some people say in the east. I don't know a lot about this eastern thing. That both she had two boys. The father was around. I don't know if both boys are doctors today. I know one got a national scholarship, went on to be a doctor. By age 15, one boy, and this is my exception to the rules, huh? Had about 13 CXCs all at grade 1. At age 14. And when I speak to the mother to supplement her income, she used to grow potatoes, eddies, yams, and other things on the plot she had. You understand what I'm saying? So children, there's a youngster I taught years ago, and then one day I missed him. I think he had gone on, but I had missed him in the school environment, primary school. And he came to see me in the Ministry of Education when he was in there. He said, I had to come and see you. I said, but I missed you, and I didn't know where you went, and I couldn't find where you went. He said, my mom died. And I had to go to the States to my aunt. Now, the argument in the school system that I knew at the time would be that he was just about an average student. I said, so tell me about the study. He said, I have a master's degree in sociology. Because we try to shunt our children through the system too fast. We push them in at one end and narrows the other end and push them. No. Let us find the level with our systems. And therefore, I like the notion of the linear process. In fact, I wanted to work with a school. We weren't able to get the land. That started at early childhood education on the compound, with the appropriate demarcations. Primary education on the acreage. I think we went for 35 acres at the time. And secondary. And that they'll be comfortable moving from the early childhood phase into the primary phase, and even more comfortable moving from the primary phase into the secondary phase on one compound. But that school wasn't built. I got a lot of anger about that in my bosom still. That school was to be built at Searles, if you remember, John. The headaches and the hells we had and bring out that secondary school. There were, in truth and in fact, to be 11 schools. That new secondary school at Searles, clear the land, we sent the money down to housing. I know what happened. I know, you know too. We were to build new schools at Wesley Hall. You know where Wesley Hall is? In King Street. Belmont Primary. St. Martin's, Mangrove. St. Elizabeth. We had set up to build a school at Chalky Mount, but because of the dropping numbers, we moved those children to aid the cost of Edwards down the hill. All of those are structures. At the school at Pedro's, I don't know if you're still there up in the Pine. That is Wilkie Camelot. That's in the Pine. Which school in the Pine? No, Lutheran is on the main. Wilkie. New classroom block. All of those things were there. We had $100 million, $70 million from the Caribbean Development Bank, and $30 million from the state government. Since 2011, we were voted over office in 2018. Couldn't get one bill. Couldn't get one bill. Suffice to say, I know some of the people who cursed me and Michael Ashley because at that time he was Minister of Transport and Works. I don't like them. Maybe we took a decision to try to move this process forward. And a public servant sent it to the Solicitor General. You remember? John, I don't forget nothing, so. I got a claptrap brain. Once I lockdown, you lockdown. You can also take in a cabinet decision and send it to the Solicitor General. Are you in procurement? Well, we still for some of that foolishness. Anyhow, what's going on? So there's that department, secondary school. Student support services, absolutely important. I was talking earlier about one guidance counselor. A school with 1,100, even though school's population dropping, but say 1,100, 900, you can't have one counselor. Not with all that's happening in the communities from which they come. Not for youngsters who are coming into the classroom early in the morning, pulling a talk. You know what's a talk? Good. I ain't gonna call that a name because we have passed legislation in relation to that, and looking right and plant sugar cane to plant talk. So we're gonna have a lot of talk-minded people knocking about Barbadian. It's talk. There's another word for it. You know, it's frightening. So you already come in sweet. What teacher I want to hear? I don't want to hear you. Not everybody can handle this stuff because we are all different. Not under the sight of the Lord, but in our makeup. So we got challenges. So we need those counselors, we need career guidance people, behavioral intervention, the psychologists. When we were there, we said we were going to take a deliberate attempt to have more and more clinical psychologists trained. And we provide national development scholarships and special awards for those people. Intervention strategy under the government at the time. Parental involvement is going to be important, and I mentioned that briefly. So student support services department is one but small. You got to build it out. More money. I talk about the education technology department. That's going to be important. Evaluation of educational apps and tools, virtual learning environments, technology enhanced and assessment. Assessment must be done using that. The learning management systems we call LMS, we can design your assessment methodologies or modalities. So it's coming from you. Or you can tell the person who's in the technology department, create these banks. So you have to lighten the load of the teachers so they do more delivery. So you create a massive technology banks to aid curriculum and aid assessment in the school system. So we need that. E-learning platforms, budgeting and resource allocation, and partnership with technology companies, wherever we can find them. Research and statistics department, one of the weaknesses that we have is that we don't do enough research even now. So I said people get up and talk, as I said, all kinds of things. And they're talking it without the facts, without the data or the data. One English, one American. Without it, you can't run a system without that data or that data to inform what you want to do. I saw some information, as I said earlier, in the government paper. I can't say if it's right or wrong, but I said what I did when I like doing my own things, because nobody can say I let you down. I can only let down myself. I took the statistics in the raw form from 2003 and worked those statistics right through to 2013 to see how we were performing at different points in time at CSEC. We didn't have the CVQ yet, or CCSLC, or those things. Thanks, brother, for coming. I then was able to get statistics to deal from 2013 to 2022. I won't tell how I got those. But you can get them to analyze those as well. So I would have from 2003 right through to 2022. I can tell you which school went up, which school came down, who were the competing schools. I can tell you that nearly every school in Barbados has got grade ones. Nearly everyone. From children who come in with 30%. Not enough, I want to make that point. Not enough, because there are frustrations sometimes in the system in relation to that. But I have all of those. I like this thing. Higher education department, can't leave out university, Community College, SJPP, Eardiston. One of the things that was important, all the papers were prepared by the Higher Education Development Unit up there below, BCC in that building below there, for a campus in the north, shared jointly between BCC and SJPP, or SJPI, as it is called. Problem we ran into resources, because you got to build infrastructure, purchase the land, all that was went through, but we couldn't build the infrastructure. We negotiated with the Chinese for the Hope Agricultural Training Institute. I have seen nothing has happened to that. We had the plans. I still got them in my email, every design. And we were going to take surplus produce from the farmers around, right that and plow them back in. A cannery was to be part of that college under the aegis of BCC. That's just another one, BCC and SJPA. So we're investing. All of those structures were put in place, but we have stifled some of that. The land at Duke's Plantation, I've not seen that land. This is 3 times that they've had some opening. The first one was when I was minister, and the land was passed over to the University of the West Indies. But then they saw it come out again. And then they saw it come out again. Well, how many times have you want to put a crown on a head? The land was vested in the University of the West Indies, and we had negotiated $50 million, whatever is the equivalent one, for both that project at Hope and the project at Dukes. I still have all the documents, but I don't get on the calling programs and call about these things. I ain't got the energy. And I will say if I'm right in the time. But all of that we've done. So the higher education, all that's part of the transformation. Earlier, I mentioned that infrastructure and facilities department. Infrastructure. I am really flabbergasted to note that after spending so much money on infrastructure during EduTech, the quality of our schools. I say nothing about the contractors. I don't know. But I could tell you that when I move around and look at some schools, the best work was not done. And you know how government upkeep of buildings tend to be. But if you spending that kind of money, you gotta give me good work. And therefore you should critically look at those persons or those institutions that work. So you know, God spend a whole set of money. I was told that the Prime Minister and the leader of this exercise said, if I have to get 2 schools, I will do that. I will procure the Catholic school, the what's it called? Ursuline Convent. Not a bad facility, but you've got to go in, examine and see what needs repairing and furbishing. And another one. I've indicated in the paper that I sent on, look, we have to look, there should not be parking St. Michael with other schools. You want at Searles, we had one at Flat Rock, so you can connect from St. George, St. Joseph, and those into Flat Rock. The one at Searles, you can come down out of St. Philip, go up from Christ Church, and the top part of St. George and St. Michael could go up there too, if you so desire, as we make the change to accommodate smaller numbers so you get more individualized attention in the school system. I don't know what will happen. Money to build a proper school now to meet the needs of students in the 21st century, it will cost nearly $50 million for one properly set up infrastructure school. I'm not yet talking about the technology that has to go in, the desk and say that's the building and procuring the land. $50 million Barbados dollars. Don't play around. So that's important. I guess we'll wrap up, John. The Budget and Finance Department. What I say about that? The Budget and Finance Department within the Ministry of Education plays a critical role in managing financial resources to support education initiatives and operations. They're going to look at that. If they don't look at that, we're spinning top in mud. I've never been able to spin a top. The little things from me, watch, I can spin so, but the real top is the one you put the string on and you pull that. I've never been able to do it. I don't have everything at my disposal. You can't even try to teach me because I won't learn. Somebody else. And that brings me to another story about learning. I taught a youngster who used to look at me as though he was vacant. You know, when he looks at you, you don't see any expression, anything coming to you. He left school. Just give me a second. John, this is no name water. Oh, he's one of them. Okay, at least the top screw down. As used Zaffa Hills, I'm advertising for them. I taught this chap. It was from Ulston. He left school, and then I missed him for a number of years, and then I saw him, nice muscles, and his face had changed. So I stopped. He stopped, showed me, Jonesy! At school I was Mr. Jones, but outside now it's Jonesy. I said, how are you doing? How are things? He said, I'm fine, man. I'm entering some competition. So, I mean, what are you doing working? He said, I work in the fish market. I said, what are you doing in the fish market? I might feel as a boss, if I go and buy a dolphin, I got to pay he to skin it. And he moves his knife, you know. You understand what he wanted to do and how he wanted to learn? Within every competition that you can think about in fish boning, a lot of people in here can't bone flying fish. They cut off the head and the tail, and then they don't cut their bone, and then they cut the center. But I can do it. But I wouldn't do it because I don't eat flying fish. I ate them in Sudan when I was young, and the crocus bag, you know when the crocus bag come around? Fellas would $5 for a whole crocus bag of flying fish. Nowadays, you get 10 for $20. And cheap, not cheap. Sorry, I don't know. I say I don't eat. But I'm showing you, we need to have a sort of exponential tracking policy to see how our children go up to at least, I would say, age 20 in the country. Not just while they're out of school, so we miss them. There are children who leave school at fifth form and go then to these post-secondary institutions, like place down White Park Road, belongs to the former speaker, or Levels or other places like that. And in 1 year, after exiting secondary school, so what what that is telling me? That child needed that extra year or two in school. That's why I support to 18. For those, we can still keep compulsory education at 16. Principals have been creative in creating upper fifth. But in order for you to remain in upper fifth, you got to show up, be disciplined, and good behavior. And children got results. So in fact, we need to treat the trajectory of how our children are progressing throughout the system. There is a lot of more potential, and there's a lot more qualifications that you can get if that is what we want. Before we were voted out, the chief education officer at the time and the technical personnel in there were moving towards, and thankfully I see it in government's reform proposals, of not only spending time doing CXCs, but that other examination bodies can also impact on student learning and excel. In my day, going through secondary school, we had Pitmans, LCC, GCE, LCC Intermediate and LCC Advanced. And then because of regional and national pride, nothing wrong with that, we pigeonhole it into CXC. But in reality, give children an opportunity to matriculate with a qualification. We introduce CVQs right throughout the system. Nobody don't credit us for that. CVQ at level 1, technical skills. Got resources gradually to put into that. Caribbean certificate of secondary level competence, that as well. So we knew what we were doing. We weren't allowing 11 plus to frighten us. Because one thing you can't do, and I'm scared that this country is trying to dumb down people who might be gifted. I'm going to repeat that. We can't dumb down those who are gifted. Every society pushes its gifted, but they also lift up those who might not reach the level at the time that they should. You got to lift everybody up. Once the boat lifts, everybody lifts. Once the water rises, everybody must rise. That has to be the philosophy. Right? And there's some points in here I make. What do we do with the gifted? We also have to confront underachievement of boys in the system. One of the things that have always amazed me is that a youngster, 19, 20, 21, 22, left school, maybe one, CXC or something, would drive his girlfriend to university, to community college, school of continuing education, or open university. She goes in her class and he said, "Brum, brum," and gone. She comes off 8 or 9 o'clock, he turns up there. Collects her, carry her home or whatever. She graduates. She gets her own car, so he ain't got to brum, brum no more. Truly others. There's no more brum, brum. No, and I'm saying that is a problem for the male in any society. The male in the society, just like the female, should be a leader, must be a leader. The seeds of the civilization is planted from the male to the female. And I'm speaking in the normal cultural tones. I ain't talking about nothing else. And therefore, we can't have our boys not being imaginative, not challenging themselves to develop and to grow. If you go to any building, people build houses and things, and you say to them, how many applications do you receive for housing today? Or how many do you have? Say, but I have 100. And then you try to break it down. How many are females? 85, 90. So once you say 85, 90, you know it's the other kind of males. Because there's something that seems to stop us men from advancing and going forward, but relying on it. Is that part of the culture? Is that part of weaknesses? The system was not always like that. Man always said, my father said I got to provide for my family. I got to build a house from the shed roof to the front, and I put on a water toilet after we move up from the cockroaches down in the pit toilet. And let it be frank. And therefore, as part of now re-engineering, reimagining of that, we have to look critically at our men, our young men, and what they're doing. International Relations and Cooperation Department, and I said about 18 departments, some can be fused to carry out this agenda. I want my party, the Democratic Labour Party, not only to be critical, but to critique for the future. I want them to be able to say once we get to power, once we get back the reins of governance of Barbados, these are the paths that we would take. These are the paths that we would implement. These are the things that we will do to lift the education system up and so many other things that we have to lift up to make sure that this country. I cry. I'm wrapping up, John. I cry. People believe that I mention cry. But I cry. Because I am scared for my country. I remember in the apartheid period, there was a writer, a fellow called Alan Paton, Alanpaton, who wrote a book called Cry, the Beloved Country. And it has a poem in there that I love. Cry, the beloved country. I am crying my beloved country because I am seeing so many things askew, so many things going wrong. And we have to be in the trenches as well, as a party and as individuals, trying to change the trajectory. Why should our lands be looking like they are? when there's technology to help, when there are new entrepreneurial models, not only I own, but I can own, but all of my workers have to share. Change the perspective. Why should Harrison Cave is run now not by a Bajan, run by somebody else? I'm told, I don't know, that the airport at which I land once every 5 years, I'll be landing in the Arabs world. These things frighten me, not because I want to hold on them with some nostalgic, historical perspective, but because they're part of me. They're part of my DNA, they're part of my naval strength. They're things that help me feel whole. Help me feel as I'm a Bajan and a Caribbean person. Bajan first. I ain't care about you tell me. I'm a Bajan first. And that doesn't eliminate anybody who feel like they're Bajans too. I'm a Bajan first. So I want to feel the pulse of my nation. As we feel the pulse of education, as we use education to make our people see better, see more positively, stop the violence. Stop killing off one another. Work to support your family, look after your children, build your homes. It can be done, and we can do it. We have done it in the harshest of times with previous generations. You know, my daughter has this way of telling me, but Daddy, that's the old time days. I said, darling, I bought some yam, they're white Lisbon. You want some? No, Daddy, that's the old time days. What do you want? Daddy be passing up. I ain't calling the name. Daddy be passing up, stop and buy something. I said, Dad, I don't have the money. But sometimes you still got to stop, you know, because otherwise, they must live and they must have their being. But we have a lot of work to do to help the process of reimagining education, but doing it right. Don't rush it. It is an evolution and not a revolution. Education is an evolution, not a revolution. Revolution will be sharp and hasty, and then end up to kill everybody. Evolution creates transformation and better hybrids in the system. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. But let's certainly say thanks to Ronald for his presentation. It was so thorough, I don't think there's many questions that are going to be asked, but at the same time, I'm sure he wants us to engage him for a little while.